I hadn't worn heels in over 2 years. Not since the night I walked out of the Whitmore estate with my life unraveling behind me like the hem of a silk dress. Back then, I had everything: a career, a marriage, a future designed like a Pinterest board. Now I was standing in my kitchen in borrowed shoes and a thrifted gown that still had the price tag tucked inside, staring at an invitation I should have burned. The Whitmore Annual Winter Gala. Formal attire, 7 p.m. sharp. My name written in gold foil like an apology. Or a trap. I should have said no. I wanted to say no. But my mother's meds weren't covered this month, and the woman who used to be my landlord had stopped replying to texts. So I went. I told myself it was one night, one glass of champagne, one reminder that I didn't belong in that world anymore. What I didn't expect was him. The Whitmore estate was just as I remembered. Intimidating, perfect, too quiet. The chandeliers still dripped with crystal, the guests still reeked of old money and quiet judgment. I had barely made it past coat check when I heard my name. Savvy? I froze. No one had called me that in years. I turned slowly, already bracing myself. There he was, tall, graying at the temples, wearing a black tux that made him look like every forbidden thought I'd tried to bury. Graham Whitmore, my ex-father-in-law, and the man I'd spent far too long trying not to dream about. His eyes scanned me like he didn't believe I was real. "I didn't think you'd come," he said, voice low and unreadable. I almost didn't. We stared at each other for one beat too long. I should have walked away. I should have made some cold, rehearsed excuse. But instead, I said the dumbest thing imaginable. "You still hosting the silent auction in the West Wing?" His mouth twitched. "You still remember. Hard to forget the only night I ever saw you smile." He took a slow step closer. I didn't move. There was something dangerous about how close we were standing, how easy it was to fall into the familiarity of old habits. My chest tightened. "You look different," he said finally. "Yeah," I whispered. "You look the same." That wasn't true. He looked tired, the kind of tired that money couldn't fix. There were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there before, and a tension in his jaw that looked permanent. I had hated this man once, for not believing me, for watching me walk out of his house without stopping me. But in that moment, something inside me cracked. I turned toward the bar, needed air or distraction or both. I didn't realize he'd followed until his hand closed gently around my wrist. "You shouldn't be here," he murmured. "Then why was I invited?" He didn't answer. Instead, his gaze dropped to the thin strap of my dress resting against my shoulder like a question he wasn't brave enough to ask. I should have pulled away. But I didn't. Something shifted between us. Maybe the air, maybe the years of anger still simmering beneath our skin. When I finally spoke, my voice was steady, but my heart wasn't. "You always hated me, didn't you?" Graham's jaw tightened. "No," he said, barely above a whisper. "I never hated you." A beat of silence. "I hated that you saw through us." My breath caught. I wanted to say something sharp, something that would snap the moment in half, but I couldn't. Not with the way he was looking at me. Like I was something he'd lost and never expected to find again. The string quartet started to play something slow and haunting. My skin tingled. "Dance with me," he said suddenly. I blinked. "What?" "One dance. No press, no cameras, no Whitmore legacy. Just us." "I shouldn't," I whispered. He leaned in. His breath was warm against my neck. That's why you will. The first few steps were clumsy. We hadn't danced in years, not even back when I was married to his son. But somehow, our bodies remembered. There was tension in the way his hand rested on my lower back, like he was holding back from pulling me closer. My fingers grazed his shoulder, and for a second, I let myself lean into him. One dance turned into two, then three. Neither of us spoke. We didn't have to. The silence said enough. When the music finally stopped, Graham's hand lingered just a second too long. I looked up at him. He looked down at me. And in that moment, I saw it. The thing I wasn't supposed to see. Not hate, not guilt. Hunger. It made my skin burn and my chest ache. I stepped back. I needed space. I needed to breathe. But before I could say anything, he leaned down, voice like smoke and gravel. You have no idea what you're walking back into. I met his gaze, refusing to flinch. Then stop inviting me. And I walked away. I told myself I could keep things professional. Just a few weeks, one project, some floral centerpieces and donor lists in exchange for a private nurse, a specialist, and enough breathing room to get my mother through another month. That's the only reason I said yes. At least that's what I kept telling myself every time I walked past the third floor and felt his presence behind the study doors. The Whitmore Foundation had apparently gone dormant after Eleanor died. They said it was too much for the family to manage. Too many memories, too many eyes. But now the board wanted it active again, and apparently I was the solution. I knew it wasn't about my resume. There were a dozen people more qualified. No, it was because Graham knew my name still had bite in the press, and because in some twisted way, he wanted me near. What I didn't expect was how badly I still wanted to be near him, too. The first week passed in a strange kind of silence. The house staff were polite, overly so, as if my presence might cause a scandal all over again. Miranda, Graham's sister-in-law, made a single cold visit to check in on the foundation's plans, and I caught her staring at me like I was a bug in her champagne. But Graham, he avoided me. Except for the moments he didn't. Like when he walked in unexpectedly during a planning call, said nothing, just handed me a cup of coffee with exactly the right amount of creamer. 2.5. No sugar. I remembered, he said. Or the night I worked late in the East Parlor. I was organizing donor portfolios when the power flickered. An early winter storm had rolled in and the wind howled like it was trying to peel the past off the house. The lights cut out, and suddenly, there he was, flashlight in one hand, whiskey in the other, already knowing exactly where I'd be. You always hated thunderstorms, he said as he set the drink down beside me. I got used to them, I replied, staring at the fire crackling in the nearby hearth. We sat in silence for a while, the storm rattling the windows, the glow from the fireplace catching the silver in his hair. I never got used to what came after, he said finally. I turned to him. He didn't look at me, just sipped the whiskey like he hadn't said something that made my throat tighten. There were other moments, too, quiet ones that didn't seem like much at the time. The way he placed his hand gently on my lower back when we passed each other in tight hallways. The way he always stood just a little too close when we reviewed floor plans or gala seating charts. He'd lean in behind me, his breath warm on my neck, his voice deep in my ear. You missed a comma, he said once, pointing at a draft. But he didn't move. His hand rested on the edge of the desk, close enough that my elbow brushed against it, my skin burn. I started dreaming about him again, and not just the heated kind. The worst was the one where I came downstairs and found him asleep in the library chair, a blanket over his lap, a book resting on his chest. His glasses slipped down his nose. I kissed his forehead. I woke up crying, One morning, I caught him in the kitchen. It was 6:17 a.m. I'd come down early to grab coffee before a florist meeting. I expected the usual empty counters and soft hum of distant staff. Instead, there he was, standing barefoot in sweatpants and a faded Patriots t-shirt, pouring cereal into a bowl, like a regular man who didn't own a skyline. We both froze. "You're up early," I said, suddenly very aware I was wearing leggings and a hoodie with a hole near the sleeve. He gave a half smile. "Jet lag. I flew in from Denver last night." There was a pause. Then he offered the cereal box. "Cinnamon Toast Crunch," he said, holding it out like it was a peace offering. I took it. We sat at the kitchen island and ate straight from the box, occasionally crunching in sync, and for the first time in weeks, I laughed. "Didn't peg you for a sugar cereal guy," I teased. He shrugged. "It's my late wife's favorite. I keep it around." The air changed. He didn't flinch at her name, but something in him settled, like he was relieved to say it out loud. "She would have liked you," he added quietly. I swallowed hard. I would have liked her too. That night, I heard a knock at my door. Not loud, not urgent, just steady. When I opened it, he was standing there with a paper bag in one hand and a sheepish look on his face. "I remember you liked apple pie from that diner in Beacon. I passed it on the way back." I blinked. "You drove an hour out of the way for pie?" "I drove too. They only bake it fresh on Thursdays." My heart stuttered. We sat on the floor in my room, eating pie with plastic forks and listening to Van Morrison on a tiny Bluetooth speaker I kept from my college days. "I used to dance barefoot to this song," I said, tapping my toe to the beat. "I remember." "You were never around much back then." "I was building a business," he replied, voice tight. I turned toward him. "No, Graham, you were hiding." He looked up then, eyes meeting mine in a way that felt like stepping off a cliff. "You think I was cold," he said. "But I saw everything. I saw what my son did to you. I saw the way you held yourself together when everything was falling apart. I just didn't know how to fix it." My throat closed. "Maybe you weren't supposed to fix it. Maybe you were just supposed to be there." There was a long pause. His hand brushed mine, and for a second, I didn't move. I didn't pull away, but I couldn't let myself fall. Not yet. Not with everything between us still tangled. I stood slowly, clearing my throat. "I should get some sleep. Big day tomorrow." He nodded, but didn't hide the flicker of disappointment in his eyes. Later that night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, pie crust still on my breath, and the ghost of his hand on mine. I hated how much I wanted him. I hated that somewhere along the way, the man I once blamed for everything had become the only one who really saw me. And what scared me most, he wasn't just a part of my past anymore. He was becoming the one thing I never expected to find again. Hope. There's a strange kind of quiet that comes right before something big happens. Not loud, not obvious, just still, like the air's holding its breath with you. That was the night of the Foundation's relaunch gala. I remember zipping up my dress with one hand while holding my mother's last prescription receipt in the other. I remember applying lipstick while watching a rerun of The Price is Right on mute, just to feel normal for 5 minutes. I also remember thinking, if I just get through tonight, I can finally walk away. But life doesn't really work like that. Especially not when he's in the room. The gala was held at the Whitmore Hotel downtown. Old brick and gold trim, candlelight everywhere. The kind of place where secrets felt safer in shadows. I wasn't supposed to look for him. I wasn't supposed to hope his eyes would find mine across the room. But when they did, I forgot what I was doing. I forgot everything, honestly. He looked like something out of a dream. Black suit, no tie, shirt unbuttoned just enough to break every rule in my book. And he was watching me like I was the only person in the building. The night was a blur after that. Speeches, applause, donors, shaking hands, and flashing plastic smiles. I couldn't tell you what was said or how many people asked for my business card. All I remember is sneaking upstairs just before midnight to grab an extra box of gift bags and finding him there, alone. In the bridal suite, we'd converted into a holding room for VIPs. He was staring out the window at the skyline, tie draped over one shoulder, glass of bourbon in his hand like he couldn't tell if he wanted to throw it or drink it. "You're hiding," I said, closing the door behind me. He turned, slowly. I could say the same. "I was working." He stepped toward me. "I wasn't." That stopped me. He set the glass down gently, as if it suddenly weighed too much. "I saw you tonight. All night. Laughing with people who used to whisper about you, fixing everything before it broke, smiling even when your eyes said you were somewhere else. You always did read too much into things. Only when it comes to you." The air in the room shifted. I felt it deep in my chest, like a string being pulled tight. "I'm not looking for trouble, Graham." He stepped closer. "What if I am?" My heart did that stupid thing where it forgot how to beat correctly. "You don't get to do this," I whispered. "Do what?" "Act like you weren't part of the reason I walked away in the first place." His jaw tensed. "You think I don't carry that every day? Then why did you let me go?" He looked away. "Because I was a coward." I blinked. "What?" "I knew you were hurting. I saw what Nathan did. I saw how lonely you were. But you were my son's wife, Savannah. You were never supposed to be mine to hold." The room fell silent. My stomach twisted. "You looked at me like I was broken," I said. "No," he said softly. "I looked at you like I wasn't allowed to love you." That broke something in me. Before I could stop myself, I crossed the room. Not thinking, not calculating, just needing to feel something real. I reached for him, my fingers brushing against the collar of his shirt. His breath caught, eyes closing for just a second. "I don't know how to forget you," I whispered. He opened his eyes, and I swear I saw a lifetime in them. "You don't have to." He kissed me like he'd waited 10 years. Not gently, not tentatively, like a man making up for every second he'd lied to himself about wanting me. And I kissed him back like I ran out of reasons not to. There was nothing polished about it. His hands were rough against my back, my fingers tangled in his hair, knocking over that fancy bourbon glass as we stumbled backward into the velvet sofa. When he pulled back just slightly, his forehead rested against mine. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. I didn't. Instead, I pulled him closer. "Please don't." We didn't talk about legacy or guilt or names that used to tie us together. We didn't talk at all. Just touch, breath, and quiet gasps that echoed louder than words. I remember the way his hands moved like he already knew every scar I carried. I remember the way he looked at me after like I was something fragile and holy and dangerous all at once. And I remember thinking, I don't know if this is love yet, but it's the closest I've ever felt to home. Later, when we were tangled in sheets that didn't belong to either of us, I asked the question I was scared to say out loud. "Do you regret it?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached for my hand under the covers and brought it to his chest, right over his heart. "No," he said, "but I'm terrified." "Of what?" "Of what happens next, because I don't think I can lose you again." I swallowed hard. "We'll figure it out," I said, even though we both knew the world wouldn't make it easy. Still, in that moment, under the soft hum of city lights outside and the warmth of him beside me, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, We were worth the fight. There's always a moment when the good part of a story gets interrupted. Ours came 2 mornings after the gala. I was sitting at the breakfast nook, drinking lukewarm coffee and sketching centerpieces for the next Whitmore Foundation event. My phone buzzed once, twice, then fell silent. I glanced down, assuming it was my mom's nurse. It wasn't. It was a screenshot, sent from an anonymous number. Me, Graham, in the suite. And underneath the words, "Hope the board enjoys this love story." My stomach dropped. The air in the room suddenly felt thin, like someone had knocked the wind out of it. I didn't even have time to process before Miranda walked in. She didn't knock. She just stood there in a perfectly pressed cream blazer, holding a manila folder like it was a loaded weapon. "We need to talk," she said, voice flat. "Upstairs. Now." The next 10 minutes felt like I was on trial. There, in a sterile boardroom with sunlight pouring in through floor-to-ceiling windows, I stood across from a row of suits. People I'd once pitched charity galas to, now looking at me like I was the problem. Miranda laid it all out. Photos, hotel logs, and even a fake invoice for a diamond necklace that she claimed had gone missing after the gala. She accused me of using Graham, of manipulating my way back into the family for power or status or revenge. I couldn't breathe. I looked at Graham, waiting for him to stop it, waiting for him to say something, anything. But he just sat there, silent. Like every word Miranda spoke chipped away at something he was too afraid to admit. And that's when I realized he wasn't going to fight for me. Not in that room. Not in front of them. So I walked out. I packed in 20 minutes. Didn't wait for anyone to say goodbye. Didn't even care that my shoes didn't match or that I left a scarf in the laundry room. All I wanted was out. By the time I made it to my mom's place in Beacon, I was shaking so hard I could barely get the keys in the lock. She was asleep on the recliner, Wheel of Fortune playing softly in the background. And there, in the safety of that tiny 2-bedroom apartment that smelled like Vicks and peppermint tea, I broke down. A week passed. Then 2. No calls, no messages. Just silence from the man who had kissed me like I was the only truth in his world, and then let me walk away like I was disposable. It was late one night when I went looking for tissues and found something else instead. A hospital folder, stuffed into a drawer beneath my bed. It had been there for months, forgotten, or maybe avoided. Inside, a discharge summary from a clinic in Jersey. A pregnancy from nearly 4 years ago. My name, no father listed, no baby's name either. Just a blank space. I held the paper for a long time. Heart heavy, throat tight. I had never told Graham. Not because I was hiding it, but because it hurt too much to name something I lost. But now, he needed to know. What I didn't know was that Graham had already started to put things together. While I was trying to move on, he was digging through foundation accounts, tracing forged receipts, matching handwriting from the necklace invoice to Miranda's executive assistant, and then he found it. A contract Miranda had altered, rerouting donations to an offshore account in her name. The same account that was used to hire the photographer who'd captured our sweet moment. That's when he snapped. Not for his reputation, not even for his company, but because someone had come for me. Again. And this time, he wasn't staying silent. He showed up at my mom's place the next Friday. He didn't text first, didn't knock gently. He banged on the door like a man who couldn't wait another second. When I opened it, he looked like hell. Tie undone, shirt wrinkled, eyes bloodshot like he hadn't slept since I left. "Don't slam the door," he said quickly, holding up both hands. "Please." I didn't. But I didn't step back either. "You let me fall, Graham." "I know." "You didn't speak up." I was scared. "You're a billionaire. What the hell were you scared of?" He swallowed hard. "Of not being enough. Of loving you in front of them and losing everything." I blinked back the burn in my eyes. "You already lost me." "That's why I'm here. Because I'm not willing to let that be the ending." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a thick envelope. Evidence of what Miranda did, of how she set you up. I didn't move. Then he pulled out something else. My sketchbook, the one I left behind at the estate. "I kept it," he said. "You left it in the library 2 years ago. I used to look at the beach house you drew on page 17 and imagine what life would look like without all of this." I didn't mean to, but I stepped closer. "I never told you," I whispered. "I was pregnant. Years ago. Before I left. I didn't even know if it was yours until after." He looked like the air had been knocked out of him. "But I lost it," I added softly. "I didn't want to tell you and watch it wreck you." He reached out and touched my face like I might disappear. "I should have been there. But you weren't." "I am now." And something about the way he said it, not a promise, just a truth, made me believe him. The next time I saw Graham, it was at the farmer's market in Newport. I was holding a paper bag of Honeycrisp apples, wearing a cardigan with a broken button, hair pulled back in a clip I found under the car seat. And there he was, standing between a booth selling maple butter and a woman hawking handmade candles, wearing a ball cap and a flannel shirt like he belonged there. He looked real. No staff, no press, no tailored suit. Just Graham. And for once, I didn't feel like I had to brace myself. He walked over, slow, like he wasn't sure if I'd let him get all the way to me. "I bought a pie," he said, lifting a brown box. "From that booth you used to love." I raised an eyebrow. "You remembered?" "I remember everything." There was a pause, the kind that used to be heavy. But now it just felt familiar. "I'm staying out near Middletown," he said, eye scanning my face. "Got a little rental, quiet, ocean view, no business calls." I smiled. "You on vacation?" He shook his head. "No, I'm just done." That caught me off guard. "Done?" He nodded. "I stepped down from the foundation, sold my shares. I thought if I gave enough, built enough, made enough, maybe it would make up for everything I didn't say, everything I didn't do. But all it did was keep me from the one thing I never had the guts to ask for." I looked down at the apples, swallowing the lump in my throat. "And what's that?" He leaned in, voice quiet, steady. "You." He didn't ask for forgiveness that day. He didn't need to, because it wasn't about righting the past anymore. It was about what we were willing to build now. He showed up the next day with takeout and a folding chair, sat outside my porch like it was a second date, Said nothing when my mom made a joke about him finally looking like a guy from a Hallmark movie. Over the next few weeks, he became a presence. Steady, solid, showing up when he said he would, asking about my day, remembering how I take my coffee, extra milk, pinch of cinnamon, and carrying my groceries without asking. He'd help my mom with the crossword and make fun of her for still watching Judge Judy. Sometimes we didn't talk at all, just sat by the water in beach chairs, watching gulls fight over French fries and listening to waves hit the shore like a slow drumbeat. And one night, after dinner and a dumb romantic comedy that made us both cry more than we admitted, he said it. I want to build something that doesn't have anyone's name on it but ours. It wasn't a proposal. Not yet. But it was a promise. The proposal came on a Sunday morning in March. He woke me up with pancakes and coffee and a tiny velvet box tucked under the napkin. He didn't get down on one knee. He didn't make a speech. He just looked at me like he knew he wasn't offering perfection, just permanence. I don't want a legacy, Savannah. I want a life. And I said yes, with syrup on my sleeve and tears in my coffee. We didn't throw a big wedding, just close friends, a beach house he rebuilt from my old sketchbook, a justice of the peace in Vans, and a song I used to love in high school playing on a Bluetooth speaker someone brought from their car. My mom cried through most of it. Graham held my hands like they were the most sacred thing he'd ever touched. And when we kissed, it wasn't fireworks. It was something softer, quieter, like peace after a long, hard fight. A few months later, we got news that surprised us both. I was pregnant. We hadn't planned it, hadn't even really talked about it. But when I saw the word positive, I didn't feel panic. I felt ready. Ready to be a mom again, even after what I lost. Ready to give this child something I never had growing up. A home built on choice, not circumstance. Graham cried when I told him. Quietly. Just held my hand and kissed my knuckles like he needed to make sure I was real. We didn't tell the world. We didn't need to. We just started picking out names, arguing over crib colors, and listening to the baby's heartbeat in a tiny clinic with appealing paint and nurses who knew my name. One night, after a doctor's appointment, I found Graham on the porch, wrapped in a fleece blanket, looking out at the sea. I sat beside him, belly rounding under my hoodie, the smell of salt and wood smoke in the air. "You scared?" I asked. He nodded. Every day. But still here. He turned to me. Always. And that's the thing about love. Real love. It doesn't need fireworks or front-page headlines. Sometimes it looks like folding laundry together at 9 p.m., or picking up takeout when the cravings hit at midnight, or sitting in silence because words aren't big enough for what you feel. It's showing up, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. So yeah, maybe we didn't start out the way most people do. Maybe our love wasn't clean or easy or wrapped in a pretty bow, but it's ours. Messy, earned, honest, and finally, free. Love isn't always clean or easy. Sometimes it shows up in the middle of your biggest mess, asks you to take a risk, and waits for you to be brave enough to say yes. Beneath the Legacy reminds us that the right person doesn't complete you. They meet you where you are and grow with you from there. That love, the quiet, lasting kind, isn't built on status or timing. It's built on choice, on showing up again and again, especially when it's hard. If this story touched your heart, I'd love to hear from you. Did something in Savannah and Graham's journey feel familiar? Have you ever loved someone despite the odds? Or had love find you when you least expected it? Tap like if you believe in second chances and the kind of love that stays. Hit subscribe if you never want to miss another story that makes your heart race and your soul feel seen. And wherever you are in your story, I hope you find a love that feels like coming home. You deserve that. We all do.